Something bothers me about this burglary. Like, it's not adding up, and I need to talk about it. Of course, I'm talking about the I'm sorry, I struggle with this word, burglary of Susan and Rudy Medina's home. They live across the street from Scott and Lacey Peterson. Their address is 516 Covina Avenue. Again, I'm referring to notes, so that's why I keep looking away. Their home was robbed sometime during the course of the 2 days that they were out of town. So the time frame of this is sometime between 12:24, which is Christmas Eve. They left at 10:32 a.m. That time is marked by Susan Medina placing a cell phone call to her son. They basically left, they pull out of the driveway, they get down the street to like the first stop sign intersection thing, and she calls her son and says, "We're on our way." That call took place at 10:32 a.m. So that time is recorded. They return at 4:30 p.m. on 12/26. And I'm going to talk it probably in the next video about what they came home to, because it's a completely different scene when they came home. And if you hear a bunch of noise in the background, the landscapers are here. That's what all that buzzing is. So anyway, what ends up happening is the police claim that this robbery had to have taken place on 12/26 and that it would have taken place sometime between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. And they say they got that information from the robbers. So there were two men arrested for this. So on January 2nd of 2003, so this is about a week after it occurred, which was a very quick time to close this case, by the way, Stephen Wayne Todd and Donald Glenn Pierce are arrested for the crime. Stephen Todd told the police that they actually robbed the place on the 27th. And the police said, well, that can't be true because the Medinas were already home by then. So he rethinks the date and he comes back with December 26th, and the police, I don't know if he says it or the police say it, but they figure it had to be very early in the morning because there was a heavy presence on that street, which I'm going to talk about soon. But there was a heavy presence in the street on the 26th. So to pull this off, you'd have to do it basically as the sun was coming up in the morning. Other than the two burglars telling this is when they did it, the police really didn't do anything else to confirm these dates. They just needed it to not be on the 24th, which I'm going to get into. This is People's Exhibit. This is from the actual case. This is a picture taken from the front of the Medina home. So if you're standing in front of their home, you see two things, right? This is Karen Service's home. She's the woman that says she found the dog. This is the Scott and Lacey Peterson's home right here. Now, the one thing that's missing from this photo is stuff in the front yard. The Medinas have no foliage. They have no trees. They have no bushes. They have nothing. They have just a straight, clean lawn, crisp lawn going all the way out to the street. Whereas these other homes all have trees and bushes and other things that could obstruct view if someone were driving by. This is a situation, if you were driving or walking past the Medina home, you would have a full open view of everything that was happening in their front yard. I also just want to call out one more thing. Every time Karen Service, we talk about Karen Service and she found the dog, her testimony is the dog was in the street in front of her home. And that's kind of how we've just come to know it. She found the dog wandering in the street in front of her home. But let's also keep in mind the dog is wandering in the street in front of the Medina home. And nobody ever says it that way. So if something did happen in this front of this house, if there was a van, if something were to happen, then the dog would be left in front of the Medina home just as easy as the dog is in front of the Service home. Now, I've said this a million times. I'm going to say it again just for the record. I'm not out to prove anybody innocent. I'm not. And I don't have a likely idea of somebody else did it. All I'm trying to do is to go through the testimonies and the court documents and the evidence to decide if I were on this jury, could I have convicted on this evidence? And I'm just calling out all the holes I'm seeing. And I feel like there's a lot for this case. So I'm not trying to prove innocence. I'm just trying to prove, like, Jesus, was there enough to convict? And I think this robbery adds more questions than it does answers. Now, there is a witness that said she saw, her name is Diane Jackson, and she said she saw three men in a van and with a safe in front of the Medina's home. She said she saw them on Christmas Eve, 12/24, at 11:40 a.m. She gave a description of the men. She gave a description of the van. Now, she said this twice. So she called the tip line and left a tip, but then she also went out into the street and talked to the police who had gathered in the street. So she had twice reported this. When she called the tip line, she mentioned the men and the safe, and it was recorded in the call logs. So the people who were recording the tips wrote it down, and they said it was a 459 burglary because she mentioned the safe. And so they immediately noted it to be a burglary taking place across the street. Now, this is a flyer that was put out by Modesto PD in regards to this burglary when they were looking for leads. And you'll notice what they put right here. This is Diane Jackson's description of the men and the van. This is what she reported to police, and this was the dates. They thought it was sometime between 12/24 and 12/26. So they go into this thinking that this is a viable lead, that this woman's telling the truth. She has her details down. They use her details on the flyer. Now, what else is interesting is I just want you to take a quick look at the items that were taken, right? So the items that were taken from this home, there's 2 handguns, there is a semi-automatic, there's a Beretta, there's also a lot of tools. I'm going to go into that in a little bit later, but there's a lot of tools that are stolen from the home, a Gucci watch, a Louis Vuitton purse. If you go down to the very bottom, look at that. It says numerous items of jewelry, including large carat rubies and diamonds. This is a haul. Whoever broke into this house, this is a felony. This is a lot of stuff. This isn't just some pickpocket who goes in for a few things. This is a serious robbery. The safe that they took wasn't just a small, like, wall safe you see at a hotel. It was 3 feet tall, 2.5 feet wide, 2.5 feet deep. It was a big frickin' thing that had to be hauled out. According to Mrs. Medina, it took her husband and 2 other men to carry it into the house. So we're going to assume it took all 3 men to carry it out of the house. The police offer a $1,000 reward. I'm assuming they think because probably $1,000 feels a little low to me personally, but I think it's probably because they think that some of the vagrants in the area, they had a homelessness problem. They also had a drug problem nearby in the park. I think they thought that one of those people just roll over on somebody for a small little cash reward. Up on the stand, Susan Medina testifies that the police caught the burglars. They called her in. They got some of the stuff back. So they got back both the guns. They didn't get back any of the tools. All the tools are still gone. And she said that there was over 75 items of jewelry that were never returned to her. So 75 pieces, I'm assuming, including large carat rubies and diamonds, were never returned to her. The police did say that they still had the safe and they offered to give her back her safe. She said, no, we don't need it anymore. So the police kept it in their, I guess, evidence room, and they had it. When Mark Garagos, the defense attorney, finds out that the police have the safe, in the summer of 2003, he asks them for the safe, and they have to go through all of this. They get the Medina's permission to turn the safe over to the defense. They go through every approval needed, and the police say, yep, we'll hand it over. And then before they manage to hand it over, the safe gets destroyed before it can be handed over to the defense. Mark Garagos' point is if the safe were in the back of the van and there was maybe a kidnapped pregnant woman, allegedly, in the back of the van, would there be DNA, fingerprints, something on that safe? And so they wanted to test the safe, but the safe got destroyed before it was able to be handed over to the defense. I also want to go into the dates, the 24th versus the 26th. This has been a hot item of contention, but I need to do it in another video. So bear with me. Thank you. I know I talk a lot. Please come back for the next video where I talk about the timing and what makes each of them possible and not possible.